Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I have back on the show crowd favorite Einar Tangen, senior fellow from CIGI. The reason I invited Einar back is because recently we just had another Trump assassination, and when I opened the social media, nobody believes it's for real. Everyone think he faked it. So I don't know what's going on anymore, Einar. I have no idea what's going on in the United States. That's why I have you here, trying to make sense of it all.
I know, but I mean, it's as you're discussing earlier, it seems like a three-ring circus act. There's all these constant things that are misdirecting people, and right now, despite the fact there was an attempt on his life, I think the happiest man in America today is Donald Trump. He's out there. He's somehow the Epstein files have gone off the front page, as has the Iran war, as has his domestic problems, inflation, the failure of all of his policies, the fact that his family is enriching themselves at a speed which is astronomical. If they continue this for the next 3 years, they'll be one of the richest families in America. Yeah, I mean, this is best. I mean, he wakes up every day. He said in his biography, as we've discussed before, that he wakes up every day and tries to maximize the day. And lately, every day he wakes up, he's trying to figure out how he's going to keep the Epstein files off the front page and all the rest of his problems. So he has to think of some new diversion. And last night he was handed the best one ever, except exactly what you said. I'm looking at social media, and it's not just he faked it. Somebody claims to have video of J.D. Vance's wife at Caltech or someplace in California, and guess who's there? So, I mean, the tin hats are going overtime. Obviously, people are looking at the videotape. He doesn't seem startled at all when all these shots are going off. Everyone else around him is going, "Oh!" and he's like, like this.
He did. Could it be he's just senile, because we do have camera catching him napping off in a press conference.
Well, yeah, I mean, for a guy who campaigned on Sleepy Joe, remember that? I mean, Sleepy Joe Biden. Oh, he doesn't know what's going on. And you have to remember, you have to couple this when he was confronted with some pardons that he signed. I know nothing about it. I didn't sign them. like you can fake that his Sharpie type thing. I mean, between that and his birthday card to Epstein, I mean, what can you say about the guy? Anyways, I mean, he has no problem with a constant stream of exaggerations and just out and out lies. And he thought this was going to be an easy ride. He took immediate advantage of trying to sell his $400 billion what do you call it? Capitol Theater or ballroom or whatever. When you say ballroom and Donald Trump, that has connotations. I don't know if he should be talking about the ballroom in his particular case. How many? 29 cases of women who've stepped forward and said that he sexually molested them, rape, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I know it's a good look. Not when you used to own the Miss Teen pageant and brag about the fact that you'd go backstage and watch them all naked and undressing and talk about their bodies. And yeah, not a good look. So I think he has to call it something else. The White House, Situation Room for Adventure or something like this. But he's really having a time. I mean, he's doing it. But did you see? I mean, what was beautiful is he's talking about how this has brought the nation together. I mean, a group of people who the press really don't like him, and he's like, oh, somebody tried to assassinate me, so we're all together in this, right? I don't think so.
And the crazy thing is, right after the assassination on social media, somebody made a list of all these big MAGA accounts, and all they tweet out at the same time is, "This is why we need a White House ballroom." Like, this is what got out the assassination.
How does that message get out there so quickly? Do you ever wonder about that? How is it that they're all on script? Was it there
Well,
before?
well, there
Or
was
it sent out?
a former MAGA influencer. What's her name? I think it was the same woman that
Lori Loomer?
had Elon Musk's kid. She
Oh,
said,
yes.
right? She did a big expose. She said, "Oh yeah, I was part of the MAGA influence network. Basically, they give you access. It's in return for access to the White House, make you feel like you're really important. That they basically send you a message, and then you're supposed to post it. This is why they have this coordination of influence campaign on
Well,
social
okay.
media."
So I was in politics, and this is a long time ago. I haven't lived in the United States for 21 years, but before that, I had my two law partners were very senior in the state government and obviously involved in politics. I was also involved. I had a number of appointed positions. And I ran political campaigns. And I can tell you that even back then, they had the talk points. And there's so many times you talk to these guys, this as well, we got together over the weekend. We're going to fan out. We're going to, hit our talk points. We're going to go to everything. And they wanted, this kind of communication thing. It's interesting, Carl. I mean, this was something that was born in boardrooms. When you're a CEO, you're out there, you're trying to get the message across. You spend a tremendous amount of time on that point. And to the extent that you kind of wonder what else they're able to do, because they're traveling all over the place trying to get the message across and things like that. They feel that's their position, because they carry a gravitas in terms of saying what things. But I mean, America isn't a corporate society. The idea is that you're supposed to have elected officials who can think for themselves, because these talk points are not dictated by the top guy. There's a bunch of advisors who sit around and argue for hours in some cases. Sometimes there's one guru who says, okay, these are the talk points and this is what we're going to do. And then they assign who is going to go to where based on what kind of connections that they have. So this is kind of a corporatizing of party politics. And it's the reason why you have so few people who stand out. I mean, you got to kind of wonder, Sleepy Joe, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. I mean, really? Is this the best that we have? Then you go overseas and, you have Macron, Starmer, Milei in South America. I mean, you kind of wonder, well, what's going on here? If democracy is supposed to give voice to the people, why are the voices at the top, seemingly incoherent idiots who float with the wind? So, and it goes back to this: you cannot rise in party politics unless you toe the party line. And the party listens to, influence groups, whether it's on the labor side or the business side. They have to listen. They have to put, whatever they want in. So, as you're supposedly rising up the party and showing your ability to lead, all you're really doing is obeying whatever the party tells you. And Starmer is a perfect example. He has absolutely no credibility or stomach to take on things. I mean, he's always half pregnant. You just don't know where it is. Now, Donald Trump is a reaction to that. The party politics had failed American. A large group of people, especially lower middle class, said, the system has abandoned us. The Republicans and the Democrats are the same, because they just lie to us. They tell us it's going to get better, that they're going to do better. They're going to get rid of the debt. They're going to bring jobs. They're going to be a golden age in America. And what do they deliver? Exact opposite. You get the shaft once again. So, I mean, they said, okay, we'll go outside the system, but that doesn't work either. Populists promise everything and deliver nothing. And that has certainly been Donald Trump's modus operandi. Remember, he said, no more wars. I'm going to pay attention, make America great again. That means my job on day one is to reduce prices, right? And, everything, if you please go back and take a look at what he said on day one, golden age. Are we living in a golden age? Are 3 assassination attempts in 18 months a golden age? Is him attacking the press a golden age? Is the prices rising, wars, conflicts? losing our allies, spending like drunken sailors, increasing the deficit. Poverty is up, the fragility of the American people. 60% don't have $400 in case of an emergency. They're living paycheck to paycheck. I don't think this is winning. He promised so much winning, people will get tired of it. Well, I think people are getting tired of losing. And the chief loser is Donald Trump. But I mean, if you start looking at the number of scandals involved, I mean, how many pardons? He's over 1,650 pardons, of which he's forgiven over from somewhere between 1.1 and $2 billion in fines that were assessed on criminals who were convicted in a court of law. But because he pardoned them, they don't have to pay. Yet, all of these guys seem to have some sort of connection to the right lobbyist or to the brother of the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. The list goes on, or just outright. I mean, one gave $2 billion to one of Donald Trump's cockamamie, Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, but it's whatever meme coin things, and all of a sudden he's been exonerated. I don't know if he's been forgiven for his whatever he has to pay, but I mean, come on. I mean, his sons invested in drone companies, and it's just magnified. It's now worth 750 million. They put in, 50 million. I mean, come on. And guess what? Oh, they were selected for multi-billion-dollar Pentagon contracts. I'm sure there's no conflict of interest there, and it stems all the way down. I mean, he just fired a lady who gave over a $200 million contract to the husband of her chief of staff, who had this company for all of 11 days. I'm sure he's very, very competent and incredible, and it was a no-bid contract. It permeates throughout. Kash Patel running around on this private jet, which he used to criticize about. I mean, Pam Bondi talking about ethics when her brother's handing out pardons and also getting charges dropped. All right, in the space of a month, 2 high-profile investigations were deep-sixed, and a guy who had a big problem in terms of already being convicted and millions of dollars in fines, all of a sudden found himself completely exonerated. That's pay for play. Then we can get into Kushner. He's acting in no official capacity for the United States in the Middle East, where he was just given $4 billion on top of the $2 billion that Middle Eastern countries had given him. The $2 billion was that was after Trump won first term, and then just recently got another $4 billion. Now he's in charge of negotiating between Israel and these groups. That sounds fair to you, right? I'm sure he has no personal interest. He's also the person who unveiled this whole thing about Gaza and how they're going to rebuild it. It was interesting. Did you see that that interview where he was with Witkoff, and Witkoff drops. He says, "We've been planning this for years." Of course, that predated the war and everything, but and Kushner, you got to see this. If anybody out there hasn't seen it, it's Kushner and Witkoff, and they're sitting there being interviewed. I can't remember, it was CNN or whatever, and it's Kushner's looking at him going, it's just, I mean, it's pure pantomime. You got to see it for humor's sake alone, but it gives you a very clear indication that a lot of things that we think, it just kind of happen. They aren't happen. They do have. It's maybe not a detailed plan, but they do have an overarching plan of how they want to do things. Israel is in many senses just doing exactly what the U.S. Did. I don't know if you saw recently, there's a great clip about the Powell paper. It was about 6 months before he was put on. Powell was a respected attorney from Virginia. He'd done very well, Harvard and all the rest of it, big firm, ended up on the Supreme Court, very, very influential. It was his opinion that was the basis of unlimited corporate giving for politics. That was called the Powell opinion. Anyways, 6 months before he goes on, before he's put on the Supreme Court, he writes a memo, which is very famous. You can look it up, in which he talks about the fact that it's time for a corporate oligarchy. And he lays out everything that they need to do in terms of capturing the Supreme Court, about creating think tanks that can put out all this paper, propaganda, how they can seize control of the government, how they can seize control of the legislatures and things like this, using corporate power. What caused this? Well, you have to go back a few years before that. It was Johnson Johnson won against the Republican contender in the 1964 election. And at that point, a lot of very, very prominent families who considered Lyndon Johnson to be a communist, they got together and they were disgusted because Lyndon Johnson won in a landslide. So he had not only the presidency, but he also had the Senate and the House. And he, pushed through his well-meaning, but perhaps not with consequences unintended, his big New Deal, Greater America. I can't remember what it was called. It ended up, unfortunately,
Greater Society or something like that.
The Great Society. Unfortunately, it had an unintended consequence of breaking up African American families, which had been the stalwart. This had been the heart of African American families, is that they had a very strong structure. And in essence, you could game the system so that the father's not around. Women have children, they get aid and food stamps and things like that. And there were people who did in fact do that, and it led to a deterioration in the family structure of many Black families and communities. Anyways, putting that aside, the large families, the industrial families, manufacturing families, at that time, they were still pretty much run by their founders or the children of their founders. They felt that the United States was going in the wrong direction, and that they, giving the vote or putting the future of the world, because the United States held, in their opinion, the future of the world in the hands of illiterate, stupid people. It was very, very much elitist. Was unthinkable. They needed to do it. Now, what's interesting is you go back and look at that Powell memo, and you'll see that everything that they planned has, in fact, happened. That they have gotten their way. They created institutes to defend corporate interests. He himself was a big proponent of the tobacco industry. He was, I think he represented the Tobacco Institute. Maybe smoking's good for you. You don't know. There's scientists who will say, well, it could be, right? So if it could be, we can't say it's bad for you. There was the backers of the Tobacco Institute was the tobacco industry, and surprise, surprise, everyone in the Tobacco Institute said that smoking might actually be good for you. You don't know. So, but this is the kind of chicanery that they things. He was also against Ralph Nader and this idea that there should be any kind of consumer protection. He saw that as a violation of free market principles. This was communism. Letting making people expect that services and goods would be delivered in a manner which they promised. What an idea! The next thing you know, it's just It's pure communism. People are just, you go to rich people's houses and you take their furniture because, one would definitely lead to the other. But, any event. But I mean, it is insidious. And I know we talk about it, we laugh about it. But I mean, the fact is, it's happened. And then similarly, in 1996, we talked before. I mean, the Israelis had their moment with the clean break, which is basically the same thing. It's just you're going to have an oligarchy in charge of the Middle East, basically a mafia is formed around Israel. And that if you either, they're the muscle in the neighborhood, although the smallest, they still got the big guy, U.S. behind them. And they show up and you say, you either knuckle under, all right, do as we tell you, or we're going to undermine your economy, your political system, and we'll invade you. We'll start throwing bombs at you. And we'll say it's all your fault because you're terrorists. Today I was horrified. You were talking about attempts on Donald Trump's life, which is, beyond the pale. I agree. I don't believe in that kind of violence. At the same time, they discovered there's almost 100 babies who had been decapitated in Gaza. A decapitation is, just for those who have any doubts, not a natural way of death. The fact that you have 100 of them there means that this was similar to Dachau, to everything that the Israelis claim that they suffered. This is exactly what that is. The victims have in 3 generations become the perpetrators. And this is one of my big arguments. People talk about war, and they'll first say how many people died, and they'll say how many people were injured, and they'll talk about how much destruction there was to property and things like that, and then finally how many people were displaced. But what they don't talk about is the long-term costs of war. The fact is, Israel has done exactly what Japan did in terms of turning their Israeli defense force into brutal monsters. You know what it takes to turn a normal clerk person on, of society, and get them to the point where they can shoot a baby in the head or decapitate it, where they can, mow down people and see them as animals. That is an intense process. The Japanese did it by basically when you went into the Japanese army, first year you were brutalized every day. And I don't mean like some in the Marine Corps where they're shouting at you, making you do push-ups. You were beaten, all right? You were punished. You were, starved. And this happened all the time. And you were told obey orders, bayonet, bayonet, things like this. And you broke down what otherwise would have been school teachers and people, were clerks and things like this, ordinary people's society. And then these were the people who went to Nanjing and throughout China. They're responsible directly and indirectly for 35 million deaths. That's out of 100 million deaths around. But what was the long-term situation? You look into the soul of a country that, yes, they did have economic prosperity eventually after World War II. But look at the social situation. I mean, you had men who were incapable of talking to their families. Maybe the people say that's cultural. But if I had been bayoneting babies in Nanjing, I don't think I can go back to society, and I might try to forget it, but I don't think my dreams would allow me to. I think the brutality continues, and this is the real cost of war. The brutality continues, and those who brutalized or were brutalized become the next launching point for a new conflict. Either because, like Japan, they're afraid that that others will do to them what they did, right? And this is definitely the way the U.S. thinks. We always assume that somebody will do exactly what we've done in the past. We're afraid of our own sins. Or in the case of Israel, where they were brutalized, and now they use that as a justification to brutalize others. But this will not end with this generation. It won't end in 3 generations. It will be carried forward, a memory, a scar that continues to fester and continues to cause more grief. So, when we start looking at the cost of war, please start thinking about the long-term costs in addition to all the mayhem and chaos and money and death and tragedy that happens there. It's going to continue.
Well, when you were talking about the oligarchic takeover of the U.S. government, I was just thinking, wait, that's exactly the plan for the Silicon tech oligarchs. They said as much. Mark Andreessen said more than once on his podcast, oligarchy is a natural order of things, and now we do have we have Peter Thiel's man of J.D. Vance. He's poised to take over. He was actually the one who the security rushed to first during the quote unquote assassination. It was all on camera. They all went to cover J.D. Vance first before they even got to the Trump.
They understand the 25th Amendment. Right? they know who's going to be there. And besides, his wife was seen with this guy way back in the day. I mean, I can't wait for that to become popular fodder. I mean, you're absolutely right. The reason I don't take the Silicon Valley oligarchs seriously is they're just a repeat of the steel and oil and railway barons of the 1880s, the late 1800s in America, where you had these individuals who thought they were godlike because they controlled, they had been lucky enough to be in the right position and brutal enough to pursue fortunes. But, inevitably, these guys are so ego-driven, and they're so competitive, they can't stand each other. So the idea of the oligarchy sounds fine, but they don't really want an oligarchy. What they want is to be the supreme leader. They want to be fascists. So invariably they fight each other. Maybe there's one stronger than the other, and they get on top and they try to do it. But their plan is very simple: bankrupt the government, and thereby privatize all of the functions of government. And that's how they take over without firing a shot, without democracy. They don't make any secret of this. This is dark enlightenment. Who is that crazy little guy? Karp. He's the president of Palantir. Oh my God, guy looks like he's
Alex Karp.
Yeah, I mean,
he's high half of the time, maybe 90% of the time.
He's like this. He can't sit still, and the hair's going all over the place. And you're like, you're kidding me. You're talking about elitism, and look at you. You look like you have ants in your pants, and you took too much speed last night. But that's why I don't take them as seriously. But the neocons, you do. I mean, they've been in the woodwork for a long time. I mean, you had presidents identify that the military-industrial complex is probably the most dangerous entity in the U.S. because they only exist for war or the possibility of conflict, and they need conflict in order to feed their machine. And these people, if you talk to them, they really believe it. I mean, they're true believers. They're ideologues. They peace through strength. All right, we are the guardians of the universe. But barring us, there's World War III. We are the guardians against chaos. They really do believe this. I've talked to these guys, and just ordinary people and run-of-the-mill things. They're not stupid. They have degrees, but they really do believe that they need to be in control of the rabble for their high-minded goals. And if they get rich along the way, that's okay too. If you go back to Vice President, what's his name? Formerly Cheney, Dick Cheney. I mean, here's a scary guy. I mean, he was supposed to be a trusted confidant of the Bush family, and as soon as he got in to be vice president, he started wagging the dog, which was in this case the puppy, Bush, the shrub, and he got America into all sorts of things, and his old company did very well. They got caught for a lot of fraud. They had to pay back a lot of money, or they were supposed to pay it back. I never actually looked. It'd be interesting to look if they actually did pay it back. But they made so much money. They were doing everything. Good logistics. They were providing food, housing. They're building roads, supplying private contractors for all sorts of different things in Afghanistan and then Iraq. It was glory years, unbelievable. And money was floating in. They would just take huge containers full of cash, and then it would be put into safes, and then it would be doled out. And there's really no record of it except it went to Muhammad, right? And who was Muhammad? Well, everyone. I mean, Muhammad is a very, very popular name, and how are you going to track that down? Anyways. And sometimes Muhammad looked just like an American contractor. Possible, right? Changed his name, or was his nickname? His nickname was Muhammad. Call me Muhammad. Give me $50 million. I got to do something. Don't ask. If you ask and I tell you, I have to kill you, and then that would be messy, and you wouldn't be around to give me another 50 million next week. So hundreds of billions of dollars of the $2.3 trillion that we spent there has never been accounted for, and this from an organization, the Pentagon, who has still yet to deliver, despite I think it's now 10 years or whatever that being required to pass an audit by Congress. They still have not been able to do that. Now, my suspicion is that they will be able to do this based on all of these wars. First, Ukraine, they sent all the things that they couldn't account for, if you know what I mean. Send over a few extra containers. What's in those containers? All this stuff we can't find. They may look empty, but they're not. Believe me, it's full of stuff things. So I think after this, and then with Israel, after firing off basically everything that we have and depleting our ammo and things like that, I think they actually might be able to do it. The problem is, they have so many assets they just can't account for. They don't even know where it is. So they can't even ship it from anywhere because they don't have any proof that it was there to begin with. It's just all lost stuff. I'm sure that it's in good hands somewhere around the world. One of our enemies, maybe a friend, or maybe Muhammad. So, we laugh, but you just start looking at the enormity of all this stuff, and it's incredible. So, is this tin hats time to say that? No, I'm not talking about, my conspiracy theory, right? I'm just saying there are documents out there that have been written by very, very, the Powell Doctrine was written by a guy who was Supreme Court justice for many years. He had a huge impact on the court, and he did exactly what he set out to do in that memo. So this isn't me saying that. All right, you go and take a look at Clean Break paper back in 1996. I didn't write that. Okay, that was done by Powell. It was given directly to Netanyahu. So the idea that these are conspiracy, that's what I have a problem with, Carl, is that so many people are coming out with these off-the-wall conspiracies that people get confused. They just say, well, it's just all the same. This is just all nonsense. So you can discount anything by bringing up some others things. There's some guy in Minnesota, I think he's a little bit slow. Anyways, he's run by his mother, and he was hay fever in Beijing. He was the darling of the right until they discovered that he wasn't quite all there. But anytime somebody would ask him a complex question, he would just bring up some conspiracy and equate them. All right, and it's part of the tool that is tools that are used in social media today. They're going to equate any kind of nonsense, say, well, it's all the same. You can't tell what's going on. Just listen to me. I'll give it to you. And, the idea of actually having facts and seeing, development over a period of time so that you can judge these things, that's kind of going by the way. Carl, you and I talk about them But I know very few shows where they actually go back into history and say, well, just look at what they wrote, okay, and then look what happened. I mean, there's definitely a connection here, and especially since the same people who wrote it were involved in making it happen. All right, this is not, oh well, he said it and somebody else picked it up. So yeah, it's a wild world we live in. But also remember, don't go too easy on our friends in the Democratic Party. They basically flipped. They used to be the for the working man, labor. Unions flock to them. Unions still support them in theory, but their members tend to go for Republicans now. Why? Because Democrats have become the party of corporatists, those corporations who believe that the United States should be doing their business for them. Like in the past, you had banana republics. Why were they called banana republics? Because when Dole, which had large plantations down there, when they had a problem, for instance, a democratically elected government who said, look, the workers have to be paid enough so that they can live, or they have the right to start a union and insist on fair wages and working conditions. All of a sudden, we were down there with troops, or there was assassinations, whatever was necessary in order to help our companies. So the idea that the Democrats are bringing light and sunshine to the table, I'm sorry, it's not. It's a three-way contest between special interests who are pushing it. And why? Because that's how the party gets its money. And that's how
Democrats has the transformation of Democrats to be the corporatist party was complete under the Clintons. That's what they were brought in to do, and that happened in other countries as well. Like you had Tony Blair in UK, did the same thing with the Labour Party. All these. Everybody was on board with pushing the neoliberalism around the globe, and so now we just have uniparties. We have and speak of truth. What is a strength? Peace through strength. What is not conspiracy is right now the U.S. Navy can barely feed its sailors. when people posted the pictures of their food and
they like that food. That's great meat. Great meat is highly prized in certain cultures. Great meat is where it's at. Just because you don't have the taste buds to appreciate it. Oh, I'm telling you. And bathrooms, who needs them? Shower every once in a while. I mean, are you not men? Come on. Manly men. Oh, wait a second. They have women on there too. I'm sure that's all very, very, very nice. Actually, during certain times of the month, when no sanitary disposal or facilities or products, that's nothing says close confinement with 5,000 of your closest people who smell like they came out of a
poop deck. There's a reason it's called poop deck. but
I'm just imagining these guys trying to figure out how they can sit on the railing and take a dump. I mean, they in some parts of the world, somebody was telling me that when they were riding back and forth to work in India, that many people stood on basically squatted on the curb and did their business in the gutter. And I was like, well, yeah, that's okay, but you're basically about 150 feet above the water. You're leaning out. If you fall in, you're probably propeller meat. You're part of the gray stuff that they're going to serve at lunchtime. Maybe that's
U.S. and green. U.S. Navy actually had they had the official tweet to dispel the rumors that they can't feed the sailors. They posted very nice pictures of in bright lit kitchens. They serve food, but when you look closely, they're AI generated images. You have guys whose head is through the metal cabinets.
It's very, it's wartime conditions. I mean, what do you want them to do? Actually go on the things? I mean, They can't go on, and nothing's working. But I just want to add something, and people are wondering, when you say Clinton completed this corporatist switch, you can tell that happened because under him, Glass-Steagall was repealed. Now, Glass-Steagall had been put in place by the FDR to make sure that banks, insurance companies, all right, and brokerage houses did not commingle their funds and start playing lottery with your money. That was the idea. And Glass-Steagall had done a very effective job of keeping banks in their lane, lending to people and businesses, brokerage houses selling stocks and giving advice in terms of that, and insurance companies who are taking in, you take in a little money over the years and then you pay out later for life insurance or if it's medical insurance and other things. But the point is, you do not want the premiums from insurance companies or the deposits from banks being mingled in and given to investment banking houses who think, gee, my bonus is going to be huge. I have other people's money. I can make huge bets. And if any of them works out, I'm going to be a hero. And if they don't work out, and invariably the crowd runs in one direction, and then everyone's very sorry, as we saw with the financial meltdown. But that financial meltdown was in essence a direct product of the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act. And he repealed it because he thought he was getting, universal health, and he didn't get it. So he thought, I'm making the hard decision. I'm going to give one to the other, and we'll have regulators who make sure nothing bad happens. Well, it did. It was called the 2008, 2009 financial crisis that was engineered in the U.S. because no one was watching, and people were playing big time with the numbers, other people's money. So that's an example. Once you say, oh, well, how did they do this? What did they do? All right. These are the types of things that you should be looking for. This isn't hidden stuff. You can go to Wikipedia. It's not perfect, but it gives you a very, very good idea. So in some cases, it might be worth, when you're listening to something really crazy, you say, oh, I don't know about that. It might be worth things. Even the go ahead. The AI systems will sometimes give you summaries, but I'm noticing now, and this is something, Carl, this is really important. The old adage, garbage in, garbage out, right? Now what's happening is they've learned how to game the system. So if you have a particular point of view, for instance, you're Israel, you want, you don't want bad things said about Israel, things like that. You start putting in massive amounts of pro-Israeli or questioning the other side. So you put this data onto the internet, you feed it into the systems. So when these AI systems are learning, all right, they're using their large language models, which basically means that they're taking all the information they can get and they're trying to make sense of it. It's being poisoned. The scales are being tipped. And I notice it more and more these days. If you go to 3 or 4 different AIs, you're going to get very different answers. But if you know the subject and you put it in and you notice that all of a sudden things are getting softer or things aren't mentioned, right? That is an example of how what was supposed to be the source of truth is actually being fiddled, gamified by those who are trying to obscure what the truth is.
They do this all the time because I start noticing whenever U.S. and Israel is doing some really effed up shit to Muslims in West Asia, you're gonna have a coordinated media campaign of highlighting the supposedly Uyghur atrocity porn in China. Like this happened like on the clock. Because I remember in 2018, when Israel, people think everything happened in October 7th. No, it did. Back in 2018, when Israel was bombing Gaza back then, you suddenly have all these headlines from all the mainstream media, BBC, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, saying Xinjiang is the world's largest open-air prison. So if you search that in a
And
Google
genocide,
box,
and genocide. Don't forget the genocide.
and exactly. So when you search that on Google, that's what will come up. It will come up all these mainstream articles talking about, all this, or what's the horrible stuff that China is supposedly doing to the Uyghurs. Instead, when everybody knew the world's largest open air prison is Gaza, but they were able to successfully game the search engine by putting out these articles. I mean, they still do that today.
Accuse others of doing what you're doing. Yeah, it's
exactly.
This is what Trump does all the time. He always accuses other people of doing exactly what he's doing. He's the nastiest president we've ever had in terms of personal remarks. And what does he do? He accuses everybody else of being nasty. Yeah,
speaking of changes in legislation, there was a time, until up to 2013, when Voice of America was prohibited from broadcasting inside United States, because the idea was we're not supposed to be propagandized to the American citizens. It was only supposed to propagandize our adversary, to Soviet Union, to China. But
Carl, I want you to think about this. If they had broadcast inside America, people said that's not true. And that was more the reason than we're going to convince people. This is just like, who says that? I mean, no, that never happened.
But they in 2013. In 2013, they made an amendment to change the Smith-Mundt Act. So because they say, well, it's the internet age now, we have to adapt. You can no longer, before Voice of America is, it's radio, like now internet age, everybody can access the internet. So now they modify it. So all these U.S. propaganda arms like Radio Free Asia, Radio Free Liberty, Voice of America, they can all be accessed within United States. And this is like the whole point of not propagating to American citizens is a moot point now.
Well, yeah, but they have the mainstream press, so I don't think. Now, full disclosure, Carl, I was on radio. No, it was not Radio Free. What was it? It was called Voice of America. They had an Arabic station, Al Hura. All right. And for years, they would call me up. And the first time they called me, I thought it was a joke. All right. Why are you calling me up to be on the Voice of America in the Middle East? And they said, well, we just want to hear your voice. So I got on, and they had somebody there who was, a third rate. He was just reading down talk points and things like that. It didn't make any sense. And I was a little tough on him, maybe, because I just kept on saying, well, why do you say that? And then he just go to the next talk point. So it's pretty obvious. And I said to him, well, I don't know if the people are interested in your talk points or a discussion. Anyways, when they called me back the second time, I was really shocked. I said, well, I'd assume that you never call me back again, because I made fun of your guy. And he said, oh, no, we like you. We want to have opposing views. After a while, I suddenly realized, because I kept on calling, I said, the Arab staff thought it was hilarious because it was all in Arabic, right? So, of course, the people at the top weren't listening. They had no idea what was going on. Okay. So they're sitting there going, "Oh, let's get Einar on here." Let's him. But they kept. I must say they tried to improve the opposition. I was up to as assistant or an undersecretary or assistant undersecretary, but it was the same thing. It's just talk points. They saw it as a slam dunk because this is their station, this is their propaganda vehicle, and then they'd get this annoying guy me out there questioning them. And, no, it was kind of fun. And then the party stopped when Trump defunded it. I can understand, given what what the Arab staff were doing, which was basically making fun of these idiots who they didn't agree with. I mean, they're Arabs. They know what's going on. They have relatives back, in the Middle East. They're not fooled by the propaganda. Everyone's happy. Oh, yes, my mom, my cousin got killed today. Yeah, we're all happy. Really, really happy. Yeah. So, this propaganda model has really, it's become very vicious, because it is now, a lot of it is on social media. And no one knows who to trust, because as we talk about, there are all these ways in which you destroy people's sense of trust. And then they start reacting emotionally to whatever's happening. And they say, oh, that's bad. Okay, I hate those guys, and things like that. And once they start down that path, they get involved in these echo chambers, which reinforce it and things like that. Now, they would say the same about you and I. They say, oh, well, they're anti-American, they're blah, 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 blah. But the difference is, we actually, we will discuss it. There's nothing I love better than talking to somebody who actually believes and is willing to discuss a different point of view. I don't respect if they're just, doing talk points, they don't know what they're talking about, or they just make stuff up. Gordon Chang is a perfect example. I've been on shows with him. He's about as deep as a tissue paper. He just gets out there and he throws his same old chestnuts that he's been saying now for 26 years. China's failing. This is the year. And even Donald Trump. Can you imagine? You get dissed by Donald Trump for saying China's going to fail. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, come on. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't even read. Right? There's a question if he can read, or other than a comic book and things like that. And he says, Gordon Chang, something wrong with that boy. that really is. But yet, I mean, for all this time, think about it. He's been making a living. He's been publishing books. He goes on talk shows. He gives lectures. He's brought into these conservative think tanks as an advisor, as somebody who's knowledgeable. He doesn't know anything. I mean, it's just it's a travesty.
The ironic part is, Einar, is he is brought into all these media circuit because he has a Chinese face. So by him saying those things, he lends credibility to what he's saying because he has a Chinese face. Yet so he can spew the most anti-China points online. And the funny thing is, somehow he also made himself a Korean expert. Like, what? He doesn't even know Korean. Like, he's not Korean. Why are you inviting him to talk about Korea? Like, this guy doesn't speak the language, has no cultural connection to Korea at all. It's just because he has an Asian face.
Well, look, you Carl, you've been to the U.S. You understand. They don't know the difference. I mean, you walk around, you're all Chinese to them. It doesn't matter now. I mean, I was head of a Pan-Asian, the largest Pan-Asian group in Wisconsin. It was basically we were trying to get people to differentiate between different Asians. I said, Vietnamese and Cambodians and Thai, they're not Chinese. And then the people look at you, there's no difference. You all look alike. All right. You got those names, those names. I said, well, actually, Cambodian, the names are very long and complicated and things like that. They're not, like Chinese names. It says, oh, well, you guys are all the same. You're all Chinese, and the level of ignorance. And of course, along with it came a healthy dose of racism and things like this. But in funny ways, though, Carl, it worked for me because what I did is we had about 1% of the population was at the top end of the economic scale. They're all professors and doctors and engineers and extremely successful, high incomes, high educational attainment. But then because of the Vietnam War, they brought in a lot of refugees. from Thailand, Vietnam, etc. The Hmong were a group who we used to fight a proxy war. We rescued our flyers. They were sappers, guerrilla warfare for hire. And about a third of them made it through to camps in Cambodia, in Thailand, and then only a third of those made it to the US. So you're talking about a country that was basically reverse decimated. Basically 8 out of 10 people died, as far as we know. So, but they were fighter farmers, hunters. They're great shots. But coming into a modern society was different. But I was able to say to the rest of the Asians there, especially the Chinese, I said, look, people here don't know the difference between Hmong and things. And quite frankly, the Hmong have their names are Chinese derivations. Okay, Shang, things like this, Li, all these things. So they're not going to be able to tell by the names. So whatever happens to their children, your children will be tarred with that. So what you need to do is to make sure that they have some opportunities. I'm not saying you have to invite them to their house and do all this stuff, but I'm just saying you have to kind of help them along in order to help your own children. And that seemed to appeal to people for a while. They understood that they're all in the Asian boat together, if you know what I mean. But when you have to resort to things like that, when you have to start saying that the reality is that no one can differentiate any of these things, and this is the largest percentage of the population of the world, right? So, and you can't tell the difference. That's really something. I mean, Americans, want to differentiate themselves by which state they're from and their accent and things like this. And the fact is, they get very, annoyed if you don't know they're from Texas or California or New York, things like this. Yet they will not pay attention to, people from other cultures and countries. I mean, Africans have a real hard time in America because they were considered as just like, oh, you're black, so you're African American. So, no, I'm from Africa, but I'm, I might be American, but it's a little bit different. So no respect for culture, no respect for history, and no respect for education, quite frankly. And you start looking, I mean, the cradle of civilization was Mesopotamia, all right? Well, guess what? That's in Africa. Everything started there in terms of what we know. There were people who were wandering around and things like that. But civilizations that we can trace, we can see the foundations of buildings they built, and we know that they had science and things like that. It all and languages and writing and things like that. It all started in Mesopotamia. Yet, if you ask most Americans about African history, they'll tell you it's just a bunch of people wandering around in loincloths, running through the jungle. Right? They had no idea about how ancient and how complex and diverse the civilizations down there were. And the same is true of the Arabic world.
When I was in Caltech, we had an exchange student from Kenya, and like one of our provincial counselor asked him, "Did you guys have shoes?" Like, I'm like, dude, this guy's an exchange student from Kenya to Caltech. You think he didn't have shoes? Like, come on. You think like Nairobi is all like mud huts?
No. But the problem is the person who's asking him is at Caltech. That's the problem.
That is a problem. That is the problem. He's also like supposed to be one of the top tier, higher educated American elite. Yeah. And which makes it extra funny because Americans don't know the difference between Taiwan and Thailand, and yet it's expected to spend blood and treasures to defend Taiwan. It's like they don't even know Taiwan and Thailand are two separate entities.
Let me make it clear. They couldn't pick either one of them out on a map. I mean, they just don't know, and frankly, they don't care. If you point to that area, some people will say that it's the Middle East. Others will say it's India. I mean, they just don't know. I mean, that's the ignorance of a country which is supposed to be, the most powerful country on earth, where, what we say and how we vote is going to be consequential, and yet we know nothing about it. The arrogance of it is amazing. And this is not to say that American people are bad. A vast, overwhelming number of Americans are actually pretty decent people, and they'll help you out, and they're friendly. It's not the people. What happens is there's this disconnect between the people and the elites, the people in Washington and in politics, and how they go about it. They've been completely captured by special interests, and the special interests have absolutely no use. Because when we were talking about before about oligarchical tech titans, the military industrial complex, and then corporatists, guess who's missing? The people.
Cool.
They're the only ones who aren't represented, and this is the real shame. I mean, democracy has been captured, and we have the gall to say that oh, you're not a democracy. Well, are we? Are we? I mean, Donald Trump is trying to prevent people from voting as we speak. He's trying to pass another Save America Act or something like this. Basically requiring 2 forms of ID. Guess what? Guess who's not?
So
Guess who
Einar,
doesn't have? What?
I want to pose a question for you because I have been challenged by one potential guest of mine, Glenn Luck, who often posts prolifically on China economy and like that. Originally, I wanted to invite him to do a show on how Chinese economy is actually much larger than it's been reported, because he said Chinese economy is probably twice the size of United States. But he challenged me on something. He said, rather than your normal talking points about China and US, why don't you invert it? Say, how can United States turn things around? And I really thought about this for a while, and so I want to put that question on you because you have more political experience than I do, and you and I both aware of the problems in the U.S., which is the special interest takeover of the country. How do we break out that cycle?
Well, unfortunately, we had something like that with FDR. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but he did in fact change the system. So I would say first off, the leadership. I've told you before, I don't believe in isms. I don't believe in democracy or communism or anything like that. What I believe in are the systems of government that produce good people. Because without good people, I don't care what system of government you have nothing. It will all turn bad. So I look at it that way. In terms of America, I think that in the past, at least historically, we've had people who've risen to the occasion. Sometimes people say it's the times make the man. Sometimes the man makes the times. Whatever. I think it's a combination of those. The right person at the right time can make a big difference. America has lost its hegemony. That's a fact. The world is multipolar. That's a fact. The problem is we're going through what they call a paradigm change, which is a fancy way of saying the things we thought we knew are no longer as valid, and they were creating a new set of things that we think we know, assumptions. And the assumption that America is preeminent is gone. The only problem is that when you start changing things, there are always a lot of people who say, no, I don't agree. And that's the main problem in America. You have people who believe in nostalgia, and the last 2 presidents are perfect examples of this. Biden wanted to talk about the 50s, when he was growing up, and how his dad, who was working a union job, was able to he was working, but he was not wildly educated or anything like that, but he was able to put food on the plate, help his kids with school, have a house, these types of things. And he was not upper middle class. And the kind of things that Biden had when he was growing up would be equivalent to upper middle class today. So he longed for those times. He wanted to bring America back. And then you have Donald Trump, who in essence the same thing. He wants to bring America back, but the age of industrialization, things like that, things change. You never swim in the same river twice because the water changes. It moves. So it's one of those things where until we start realizing that American exceptionalism, this idea that we can tell you what to do, but we don't have to do it ourselves because we're superior or we're looking out for the greater good, that doesn't work. I mean, every fascist group in the world will tell you that they're doing good. And even if they have to do bad, it's okay because it's for the greater good. So we have to get away from these fascistic tendencies. We have to embrace the world the way it is. We need a leader who can pull people together. And it's not going to be everybody. You're going to have at least 20 or 30% who resist, but pull the majority of people, Americans, together, and then says, okay, we have to have a plan. We're a rich nation. We have wonderful people. We used to be able to attract the best and the brightest in the world. We have educational institutions which are, storied. They have so many different varieties. You can choose how you learn and what you learn. And those are great advantages when you start talking about a knowledge economy. I mean, the irony that I always said is industrialization is low margin business. You're competing against the rest of the world. So it's supply and demand. Currently, you have supply and demand. A lot of the supply is being met by China, right? And they do it very efficiently at low price. The United States could never match what China does currently without massive, massive investments, but it wouldn't create jobs. And it would still be very low margin because it's competing for legacy industries. Yes, I need salt, I need chemicals, I need all these things. But when you can make them on vast numbers, economies of scale, I can churn out 10 billion of these things an hour. All right, no one's going to even get close to you in terms of, well, let's go into that business, right? There's no way. There's the capital. You have barriers to entry of the market, which means that it's just cost too much to try to get into that industry. And even if you do, the margins are very low. We also have a built-in problem in terms of almost every single one of our industries that dominates in the U.S. is dominated by 2 or 3 companies. So you have an oligarchy. Do they serve the people, or are they taxing the people for what they need? I mean, you know better things than the cell phone operators. All right. They have, in essence, somebody comes along. If they are innovative, they either get crushed by the rest or they get bought out. So, this is the kind of thing. So you look at Microsoft. Why is Microsoft so successful? Well, they were famous under Bill Gates for going into buying up technology that they didn't want released because they already had a huge investments in existing technology, and they needed to get their investment out, the return from that. So rather than allow some company to come in, do it, they would either crush it, saying, okay, there's something wrong with your patents, we're going to sue you and, basically bleed you dry. Or he says, you either let us buy you out, or we'll go back to number one and crush you. So they were pretty famous for being very hard-nosed about this. And there were a lot of things that they bought which have never seen the light of day in terms of the market and things like that, because it was a corporate decision. So you have to, ironically, you have to have a system where, yes, government does have a watchdog, that you do have consumer interests out there at the overall level, but that where competition is actually at the lower levels, that you don't have monopolies or oligopolies controlling things, because the reason you don't is if they could do it efficiently and pass on the savings to people, that would be great, but they don't. Their sole aim, and they'll tell you, is to enrich their investors, their shareholders. They have no obligation to anything or anybody. All they need to do is to make money for the people who own them. So, structurally, you have industry. In terms of ideology, we have to put away this idea of American exceptionalism. We need better leadership that believes that they have a duty to the people. And I'm not saying communism or socialism. As I said, I don't really care about that. What I do care about is, how do you run a society today, an information-based society, if you don't have a healthcare system? Because our healthcare system consumes, what, 15, 20% of the GDP, yet it doesn't cover most of the people. Whereas other countries, and their systems are not perfect, all right, but they spend less, between 3 and 5%, and they cover everybody. The decision not to fund them higher, that's a government decision. But they're spending literally a quarter of what we do in covering their people. If they spent half of what we do, they could cover all of their people. How do you run a country that doesn't have a good educational system? If you need knowledgeable people, if you have to train people for a new economy, the digital economy is not the old one. This is the first time in history that white-collar workers are directly under attack. White-collar workers are the people who collate, they gather information and reports, they summarize them, they organize them. Think of accountants and things like that. They're not making any money. They're simply organizing the information. But now AI can do that. And can do in a fraction of the time, and it can be much more accurate. It doesn't mean it's a panacea. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be any accountants in the world. Quite the opposite. The difference between the world with AI and world without is that without AI, there are a lot of clerks who are gathering and collating information and sending it up. Under AI, that will be done themselves. But what AI can't do is ask the right questions, all right? Institute assumptions. So the people who are in charge of what is being done, and for instance, people should understand that accounting isn't what they think. It's not just collecting information and saying, okay, it's how you characterize something. And that's what happens on the higher levels. Is this a debt or a credit? Well, there are different, people saying, well, come on, don't talk foolish. It's either one or the other, right? No. I can make a debt look like a credit. I can make a credit look like a debt. And it's a question of how you characterize them. And that type of information, it can be done at a low level by an AI, but not at a high level. You can tell it what you want, but what happens is the answers that you get from an AI are going to be largely the same, assuming they have good data. It should be largely the same. Unfortunately, in the business world, and unless you have a competitive advantage, what are you offering, right? I offer the same as him. There's no value. So there's always going to be room. But as I said, what is needed in society is changing dramatically. We need people who can think, who understand these systems. Yes, these systems have to be made. People have to invent. Robots don't invent themselves. They keep saying, well, at some point, robots can build other robots. Yes, they can, but they don't have that human element where the robot is to help humans, not to help other robots. So if they were just trying to build robots to help robots, I think they'd be okay. But if they're trying to build robots to help humans, it changes because the needs of human beings change based on age, fashion, you name it. We're dynamic in a way. We do all the same foolish things year after year, but we are dynamic. We like to make small changes. The way we regard our lives changes. And that's why this kind of one solution fits all doesn't work. So what am I saying? Okay, you need to make changes to industry to make sure that it is both safe at the top end, regulated by government. You need to make sure that there's competition so that you get an innovation, and innovation has access to the markets, can compete freely. You need to have a social service system that is allowing you to be efficient and knowledgeable and compete against other countries, because that's what we're talking about. And you're going to need a leadership and a way of not only that one leader, but you need to have a system that produces consistently good leaders. And good leaders can't exist by themselves. It's not like I create an uber leader. You have to have those behind them within the bureaucracy who do believe in a better society. If you don't have that, and I've seen that, I always used to say bureaucracy is the death of civilization. Because once people stop caring, and it's just, I don't care. It wasn't my dream to be a clerk. All right. And people hassle me and they treat me badly. So I do the same to them. In essence, they become not actuators, not people who help. They become people who get in the way, make your life miserable. Why? Because they're miserable. So, you have to have systems where people believe in what they're doing, whatever it is. And that is, it can be any ideology, but as long as you're pushing it in a way that is, beneficial to humankind. And I've told you, I think before, the world is pretty simple in my book. I've never met a good person who didn't have empathy, caring for other people. Met a bad person who had true empathy. And as I was dealing with criminals and things like that, but also in terms of business, friendships, etc. Those people who have no empathy, of course, they're going to cheat you. They regard you as, part of the jungle, and they're trying to survive. And if they have to kill you to do it, hey, those are just the breaks. You do the same to them. This is what criminals always would tell me. My only crime was I got caught. I was simply doing what everyone else does. And I just got caught. And that was, 99.9% of all these criminals. Good people are saying, well, I have a responsibility. I've been lucky. It's how you get up in the morning. If you get up in the morning, you count all the things that you have, even if you don't have a lot. If you count the things that you do have, you woke up that morning. Do you have enough food? Are you able to feed your family? These are basic things, but if you have those, it's a start. Is a Ferrari going to make you happy? I don't think so. But then there are the other people. They wake up every morning and they think of what they don't have. I don't have the Ferrari. All right. I'm not married to the most beautiful woman in the world. My children don't love me. I'm a victim. And my experience, victims are the ones who are most likely to be criminals, to give in, to say, well, no one cares about me, so it's okay. He says, people ask me about Iran, and I said, look, they have been victimized, no doubt, all right? But they're not completely blameless. And their idea that they're going to punish America by bringing the rest of the world down, sorry, doesn't work for me. It's not empathy. I understand that, they have deep problems with the US, and absolutely. But this idea that they can somehow get revenge on the US by collapsing the world economy, that's not fair. That's not human. That's not things. You're doing exactly, you've become the same monster that you're fighting. There's a good old friend of mine. He said, Einar, because I was in politics, he says, I just want you to remember something. Be careful if you fight with monsters, because it's easy to become one yourself. And that's ultimately why I decided I did not want to be in politics. The things that it does to you, the casual calculations that I could make, had nothing to do with empathy. It had to do with getting things done. I'm not saying that you can enter into something. If you're going to do it, you got to do it. I understand that, but I understand that there's a price to that in terms of who you are, because you're defined by what you do. So America just has to, if we only did 60% of what we told other people to do, we'd be pretty good. But we don't. I don't think we even do 2% of what we tell other people to do. And that's the schism. That's the difference that's happening between us and the rest of the world. I mean, can you imagine if, the Malaysia came out and said, "Hey, we don't care about anything. In Malaysia, first and only, and all of you have to be our vassal states." You know, what? No, what are you, nuts? Indonesia. Oh, yeah, it's only Indonesia. All right. I mean, China says, "Oh, no, it's only about China. We don't care about the rest of the world. The rest of the world should serve us." That's the jungle. That's exactly the wrong direction for people to go in. So yeah, let's hope. I've always said that America always changes as soon as there's no other choice. And I think Donald Trump, in a way, is bringing about hopefully what is the bottom, that we will hit bottom, and that somebody will arise who not only takes America in a new direction, but is able to attract people who believe in a better America, one that is part of global citizenship, powerful, the most powerful nation on earth, yes, but not the only nation on earth. A nation that has a shared responsibility for the rest of the world to do something about climate change, development, to keep peace, not war. I mean, we can prosper. This is the problem I always had. And I said, you guys lack imagination. We could do very, very well without these wars. We don't need to build markets off the blood of other people. All we have to do is think creatively and solve problems. We solve problems, people want us there. If we create problems, funnily enough, they don't. And that's what we're doing right now. We go around the world creating problems, and then we're surprised that people don't like us. Well, if somebody did that to us, we'd be screaming bloody murder, time to nuke them, all this kind of stuff. We're doing that now. I mean, because Iran didn't fall down, and we killed their leadership. If anyone did what we did, if anyone did to America what we did to them, I guarantee you we would have had a nuclear response. But for some reason, Americans, they don't understand that. And until we get to the point where we understand that what we do to others is what they're going to do to us, can't do it. I mean, all the religious books in the world tell you, even if you're not religious, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that simple thing is supposed to be the bedrock of humanity, of having a social civilization. And yet we routinely ignore it in favor of, well, we're right, you're wrong. It's a zero-sum world. Sorry, I'm taking it. You can't have it. Do I need it? Doesn't matter. I'm taking it. That's not the attitude of a world that's going to be at peace. It's, unfortunately, the alchemy of war, chaos, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. This is a welcome mat to them. And unfortunately, there are some weirdos who really want to bring that about. I don't understand it, but when Tucker Carlson, who has his warts, sits down with the current ambassador, former governor, a U.S. ambassador to Israel, former governor, Huckabee, and he says the things that he said, unbelievable. And then, and it's not isolated. Then you saw his interview with a senator from Texas, who said, well, yeah, I want to take out Iran. Well, how many people live there? I don't care. I don't know. And he's talking about how the Bible, there's one verse in the Bible that was basically he was the centerpiece of his life, except he didn't know where it was in the Bible. He couldn't quote it properly. I didn't seem to understand what it meant. Ted Cruz, I mean, he looked like the most massive tool and fool in the world in that. Are these the leaders we want? No, I don't think so. So let's hope that there, in the upcoming election, that there are people who do believe in a better America and are willing to make it better. Because, as I said, we're a young country. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've only been at peace for 17 or between 11 and 17 years out of 250 years. This is the 250th year of our existence. You can't say that it's it's a mistake or a coincidence or it just kind of happened. Once you had a pattern that indelible You have to, it's time to reflect. And this is not something America has been really great at. We don't reflect on anything. Donald Trump is a perfect example. He actually said it in his biography, I don't reflect. I said, why? Well, I might not like it. If I reflect, I might not like it. He actually said that. I mean, I'm just like, well, I give him points for, having a bit of a self-realization here. But on the other hand, it's kind of like, well, I wouldn't like me if I, reflected. Isn't that pretty much why you should reflect? Perhaps you could be a better person. But that's a sociopath for you. They can't see beyond themselves, and they don't see the need to do it anyways. But if we could reflect as a nation and find a leader who leads us in that direction, and I'm not saying religious or non-religious, I'm just saying how can we be better, and how can we convince people that we should be better? I mean, you look at these last three. There are three assassins. They're all white, all male. None of them was an immigrant, okay? And they had different educational backgrounds and ages. One was, very, very young, still college. One was 58, all right? He was very politically active. He'd been drawn in. This most recent one, in his 30s. Wow, he graduated from Caltech. Your things. Now everybody out there, I want you to put on your tin hat. Okay, Carl here went to Caltech. That guy went to Caltech. I'm not saying that we should draw, points of interest here, but did you participate in the assassination? This is the kind of weirdness that we're going to be getting for a while.
I use a remote ancient Chinese tactic of mind control from Bali. I send my brainwaves.
Well, I'm sure they're going to find a trail of your podcast in his social media account. But he also had a master's from California State. At I can't remember the name, but it's a very good school and very, very serious in terms of especially his area, which was computer sciences and things like that. All three were loners. They were a little bit different. They were a little more actuated, but they weren't the stark crazy guys you see wandering down the street, with a tin hat on, going, death to the aliens. They all felt very strongly that the United States has a problem and that problem is at the top. I think they're wrong in the sense that if any of them had succeeded, they would have made Donald Trump a martyr. They would have extended his thinking for years to come. And that's the problem. You don't want to do that. I always tell people I want Donald Trump to serve out his office. Because I'm really afraid of J.D. Vance. He's a scary guy. But to live long enough so that he's punished for his crimes. That they investigate his family self-dealing. They look at payments for pardons and all of these types of things. That he has to live with the fact that his economic policies were derided and shown to be shams. That he accomplished nothing. I mean, I always challenge people, what has Donald Trump accomplished? He says, well, he's guarded the border. Okay, so he took 1 million people out of the U.S. economy, which has resulted in, have the crime rates gone down? No. All right. Murder rates in some cities have in fact down, but they weren't being done. The murder rates weren't by, illegal aliens. Right. But what they successfully did is raise the price of food because the migrants were, especially in farm areas and ranches, they were the ones who were actually working for subpar wages, but those cost savings were being passed on to the American consumer. Now they're paying more, and they're wondering why there's inflation at the same time as things. I mean, there was a perfect example. There was a kind of open forum, and this woman and her husband were there, and they were saying, well, in a few months, we're going to be bankrupt. And he said, and very matter-of-factly, she says, well, I didn't think about it. I voted for Donald Trump. I knew that he was going to do something about immigrants, but I just didn't put it in through my own mind that he was going to get rid of my immigrants, the people who work on my farm, people who I liked, who were hard workers and whom I cannot replace. And this is things. But at a certain point, enough people realize it. That's why I say he will lose the midterms. His own popularity is way down. It's not going to increase because he's not going to be able to solve the situation in Iran. So prices will continue to go up. This is serious. I don't think people will realize it. It's one thing to say that I don't have jet fuel. It's another thing to say that I had 25% less crop. Instead of 100,000 bushels, I produced 75,000 bushels. And you're going to see that over a large area of the world because 20% of all of the fertilizers came from natural gas that was from the origin was from the Middle East, a lot of it from Qatar. So you have a situation where for 20% of the crops, they're going to be between 15 and 25% of where they should be. And for some farmers who didn't have diesel for their tractors or it's too expensive, they're going to have a situation where if they didn't get their crop into the ground or only got partial one, they're going to suffer from there as well. So you're looking
we don't
at
have much time left.
Yeah,
So this is a spring planting season right now. We don't really have much time left.
So you could be looking at a food shock that would be somewhere between 5 and 7% of the world's food. Well, you say, oh, well, that's not too much, 5-7%, except who's going to suffer? And when you have food prices rising, you're going to have political change. People always blame the incumbent government, whether they did it or not, doesn't matter. The issue is I'm unhappy. I'm not voting for you. I'm voting for the simpleton who's claiming he or she can solve everything with a wave of their magic wand and make everything good. And that's not going to happen. So you're going to have further disappointment. And this is the kind of stuff. I mean, look at Argentina. Argentina today under Milei. I mean, yes, yeah, he solved inflation by killing the economy. I don't know if that's where he wanted. Over 50% of the population is now below the poverty line. They had problems. I don't think that he created a solution. Creating a greater problem to solve one problem, that's not success. But these are the types of things that are going to happen. You're going to see countries fall. That means greater political instability. And that's going to make things worse. Countries can't plan long term when they're constantly having changes in the government from not mainstream parties, but fringe parties, left and right, each promising, a nirvana. We can do it. We can do the golden age for you. Can they deliver it? No, because you can change governments, but you don't change the problems. You're not going to change the harvest, right? You're not going to change the price of gasoline or jet fuel or anything like that. So we're looking at substantial problems right now. The markets, the people who are judging are trying to say, well, there's no point panicking anybody. That wouldn't be good for anybody, right? Right. Anybody, that would be us. Okay. We're not self-interest. We're looking out for the greater interest, as they say. But, I want my bonus to be big because there might not be economy next year. And this, they're selling people a lot of soft soap. This is a very, very dangerous situation. They keep saying, well, maybe it will result in a recession. Well, it will result in a recession. That's not the issue. The issue is, does a recession turn into a depression? I mean, this is where people have to really start gauging this. And I'm not saying be a prepper and get ready to, for Armageddon to go out or things like that. I'm just saying that it's probably time. And this goes to your original premise. What is the solution? It's probably time for the nations of the world to come together and to solve this problem in the only way that you can. One, you say that the Middle East is going to be denuclearized, which means that Israel has to give up their 120 or 119 nuclear weapons. The United States has to pay reparations for the illegal activity that they did just recently in terms of these attacks. It's going to be far less expensive. The amount of damage they did was $50 billion. They've already spent $60 billion on the war, right? If every day it's a billion and a half, it'd actually be cheaper to pay reparations or call it something else, but in essence, pay for the damage that we did. Stop the international tariffs on everybody, which is basically just a cynical attempt to pit countries against each other for our benefit, kind of a Hunger Games scenario. And then the last part is to tell Iran that they cannot blockade the Straits of Hormuz for their own benefit. Once they have been, it's agreed that they will get reparations. They have to take the pledge to denuclearize, as are the rest of the region, and agree that there shall be peaceful trade amongst them. I think this is what is good for the people. Now, how do you get that done? You have to have BRICS. You have to have the EU. You don't have to have, but I mean, the greater number of countries that come together, Africa, South America, ASEAN, Central Asia, BRICS, as I said, India, Russia, China, I mean, obviously South Africa, plus all the rest of them there, and then Central Asia. If they come together, you're talking about 95% of the world. And they don't threaten that we're going to go beat you up or invade you. There's no point. It wouldn't work anyways. What would be the point? You're just creating more wars. But you say economically, together, we will cut you off if you violate these terms. And in essence, your economy will die within a matter of weeks, not months, weeks. So Donald Trump is somebody who's particularly attuned to bullies, being one, and he only respects somebody who's bigger than him. If 95% of the world comes up and said it's over, this is what's going to happen, he'll make something up and say, "Well, this was my plan from the very beginning. This is how I'm getting world peace, and I want the Nobel Peace Prize to note that this was my six-dimensional underwater chess move from the very beginning, and now I've solved the world's peace. Give me that Peace Prize." I don't care if they give it to him or not, because it doesn't mean anything anymore. But I think if that's the cost of world peace, giving him the Peace Prize, sure, I'm all in favor of it. Okay, but whatever it takes to bring that to fruition, I do think that the fly in the ointment would obviously be Israel and giving up their nuclear weapons. And then having to admit that they cannot make war with everyone who doesn't, go along with what they want. That would be the other things. But they would get in return guarantees by regional countries, also by other middle countries. And we could just talking about, literally Iran and Turkey and China and, the BRICS, all the countries, says we will be the guarantor. Our guarantor is not nuclear weapons. It's economy. We will strike where you cannot respond effectively. And if that's the case, I think Iran would be very happy. They would have got what they wanted, which is sovereignty, the ability to go forward with the way it is. This would be, in many respects, a repeat of the Westphalian Treaty. This is a treaty that happened at the end of the 100 Years' War, which was a war between Protestants and Catholics, who would routinely take raiding parties, go into cities, villages, burn them down, kill everybody in them because they were the wrong religion, all in the name of God. And they, if one side did it, the other side would do it, and tit for tat. They got literally to the point where they're so bankrupt and they're so tired of killing that they sat in villages 5 miles apart and sent some guy in boots walk across some muddy roads 5 miles back and forth, delivering messages. And what do they agree to? You be you, I be me. These are demarcations of our borders. On my side of the border, I'll do what I want. Your side of the border, you do what you want. We can trade We don't have to fight. And that actually ushered in that simple idea that you be you and I'll be me, ushered in the longest period of modern peace and that the world has. And unfortunately, we need to get back to that. We need to realize that countries have their own complexities. They're a mosaic of histories, cultures, languages, and people, and they have to be respected as such. Trying to slice them up into more pieces is not going to create more peace, unfortunately. So, you kind of have to say, okay, we are what we are. Let's figure out how we can govern ourselves, how we can be relevant, how we can establish a path to development, how we can be secure, how can we be respected, and then finally, when there are problems, how do we get together and figure it out without throwing bombs and missiles at each other? Is there a better way? And I think there is. Now, coincidentally, this is what Xi Jinping has been saying for these many, many years. He's been rolling out these initiatives about security, development, respect, sovereignty, and then also this global governance initiative. And that is something that I think is, it's very simple, right? But it's visionary. It's a return to the idea that there's not one cookie cutter that rules the world. We have very complex relations. We have to make allowances for each other, and we have to respect each other. Once you do that, gee whiz, there's so many opportunities out there. So let's hope that happens.
Yeah, indeed. I really do hope this thing gets wrapped up soon because, as you say, right now it's the planting season, and if farmers don't get their crops, we're going to have food shortages at at the end of the year, and the world cannot wait until November for a reset because by November it will be too late. By November there will already be food shortages.
So November, you're starting to hit the winter crop season and the crop season in the South. There's nothing waits for peace. Planting, the seasons go on despite what we do. So it gets worse and worse.
Let's hope. Let's end the podcast on a hopeful note. and Einar, for people who want to reach you, follow you, where would they go?
Asia Narratives, the Substack. So I do a little writing on there for maybe a couple of posts a week. Really, it's pretty much a lot of stuff that we talk about. Because it's in print form, I try to make it a little bit more organized. My latest piece was just going through how, any one of the scandals that Donald Trump has would have sunk any other president previously. The Watergate break-in, think about it. It was just some stupid guys who broke into the Democratic Party. Yes, crime, but we changed governments, and it had a marked effect on the future of America. But we have Donald Trump. My goodness, the list goes on, and any one of them would do it. But he's been a master of diversion. I think the only way to combat that is not to listen to his daily diatribes, as I call them, his black cats and white rabbits that he, release. He throws a dead cat on the table. Of course, everyone looks at the dead cat, right? He says, and then he throws about 20 bunnies who start walking, hopping around the room. What do the press do? Oh, there's a bunny. Oh, look, there's a bunny. Okay. Oh, there's lots of bunnies. What do they miss? They miss the long term. The fact that we don't have a healthcare system from a guy who said 18 years ago and said on every campaign that he went to that he had a better healthcare program, and it was only 2 weeks away. And then just shortly before he was elected, he says it's a framework of concepts. And since he's been elected, and he's been elected twice, he has accomplished absolutely zero. He'll talk about lessening the cost of certain medicines. That is not a comprehensive healthcare things. He's actually gone the other way. It's now much more expensive for Americans to have healthcare. He's basically tilted in favor of, guess who? Hospitals, insurance companies. They're the ones who are benefiting, mostly insurance companies. So I say I hope the press will stop following his leads, his pronouncements, and start looking at what policies are working or not working, and then hold him accountable. Ask him questions not about, whether he's a rapist. We know he's a rapist. He's been convicted for that, or not convicted for. He was convicted of slandering somebody because he said he wasn't a rapist or something. I mean, only in law, right? And that's the kind of thing that we have to do. Start looking at his policies. Make your own decision. If you think he's doing great, fine, vote for him. But if you think that he promised one thing, a golden age, the end to corruption, lower prices, no forever wars, okay, and he hasn't delivered, that's another thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone. Follow.
I feel bad. Talk too much.
Everyone follow Einar. Follow Einar. Every time I talk to you, I'm getting free education.
I enjoy our conversations much more than I do writing those articles. It's
good to hear.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
And really, kudos to you for creating a platform that talks about the issues and things like that. And we can have a few laughs and things like that, but we know it's pretty serious. And I really appreciate your willingness to platform people like myself and others who are talking about these issues. And the fact is, you're one of the few people I know who says, somebody asked me something. He says we should talk about the good stuff and what are the solutions, and that's what we did, right? I mean, too often you run into these podcasts and it's just I'm right. Just tell me I'm right. Yeah, okay, you're right. But you hold out the possibility that we can learn and that we can be better, and I think that's the most.
Well, I like to to get people to think positively. I mean, because we live in dark times. I mean, unfortunately, and I'm a glass half full type of guy, so I wanted to always look for the silver lining. So thank you, thank you very much for that.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, very.
All the best.
And we'll have Einar back, everybody, because he's such a wealth of knowledge.
You can't threaten. You shouldn't threaten your listeners that way. Oh my goodness! I mean, you probably lost half your channel just there. Oh God, I barely put up with this guy, and now he threatens me with having him back.
Okay, we'll end on that. Thanks to everyone for listening. Until next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.